With over half of enterprise security budgets going towards detection and response in 2020, the challenge is investing in solutions that can migrate and scale with your business. ExtraHop helps security teams spot threats up to 95% faster and respond 60% more efficiently in hybrid and multi-cloud environments with cloud-native network detection and response. Kick the tires in the full product demo at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Paul Asadorian and Jason Albuquerque. Join the Security Weekly mailing list for webcasts, virtual training announcements, and to receive your personal invite to our Discord server by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe and click the button to join the list. You can be online with a lot of your peers and cracking jokes. Learn how to keep your internet safe in our next webcast with Rapid7 on August 13th. Todd Beardley from Rapid7 Research is going to walk through their NICER report. Register for upcoming webcasts or virtual trainings by visiting securityweekly.com/webcasts or visit /on-demand to view our previously recorded webcasts and virtual trainings.
Matt, I think we should maybe just mention what the NICER report is for our audience, because it represents a really awesome piece of research, and they get to hear from Todd, who's a person that led the research project, about it. And because I didn't know what it was, then we met with Todd. I was like, holy crap, dude, that's awesome. Like, you basically know everything about the internet. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Rapid7 runs this project where they're constantly out scanning the internet. And what they did is they assembled results across all this data they've been collecting on the internet to look at national internet, cloud, and kind of the exposure these different areas of the internet have on the environment. And so what Todd's going to do is going to come on and share a lot of the results from that research work and kind of show us what's changed and what hasn't changed since we all decided to work from home. Or not decide to work from home, got forced to work from home. So I think it'll be a really interesting deep dive into a lot of the research data that Rapid7's collecting by scanning the internet.
Yeah, and I think like many of us in security, when we all started working from home and saw the entire globe work from home, we were like, there's going to be a lot more stuff hanging out on the internet, right, was our prediction. Todd has the data to either prove that right or wrong. So tune into that, because I think it's super interesting. And Rapid7's just like, here it is. You don't have to register to get to it. So they've done a great thing for the community.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting. So I got a copy of this survey results last week, and I started reading it, and I went, normally we would cover a half a dozen articles on leadership and communication. But there was so much good data in here that I said, let's just spend this segment and kind of dig into this. And this talks about, it's really geared to security vendors and how to market and sell to the CISO. And I said, let's cover it on this show. I think is a perfect way to start sharing some of these results, Jason.
Yeah. And when I like Jason's here, so when I make speculations about what CISOs want or don't want, Jason can help validate that or invalidate
that. Exactly. Yeah. Well, so you read through the report. The first item you hit is CISOs value peer input the most. I think we instinctively knew that, Jason. I think CISOs have a tight community and they really interact with their peers to get some of that product validation. So peer input's a big part of this. What surprised me was some of the other areas.
Well, and I've witnessed that firsthand, and Jason can probably validate this as well, right? There are many CISO groups in several local security communities. There are CISO groups that meet at major and semi-major and probably even smaller conferences as well. I think that outside of a formal setting, the CISOs I speak with are always like, there's a bunch of us get together and have beers or whatever, and we share our experiences with products, and that's really, in my assessment and being in this industry 20 plus years, like really how CISOs communicate and the primary mechanism for evaluating whether or not they even want to talk to a security vendor, if we put it in that context. I mean, talk about a lot of things, but, right? Product evaluation.
At the end of the day, guys, there's a level of trust factor that needs to be in play, right? And like you said, folks who are my peers in many instances, we're going to the same meetings together. We're part of the same consortiums together. We sit on advisory committees together. Yep. So, we're constantly in communication, whether it be via, remote sessions on our advisory committees or whatever type meeting. But at the end of the day, we're always pinging each other on what's the latest problem we have. What are you seeing out there in the industry? What have you been exposed to? And it's that layer of trust, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we always want to be tapping into a quote unquote trusted advisor. And in many instances, they're feeling the same thing that I'm feeling out there. And it's just they're good, trustworthy counterparts to bounce ideas off of.
And I think the technical community does this to a certain extent, but I also think we've got a lot more of the technical weeds to be in. We've got a lot more of the kind of like process and architecture design to solve specific problems. So we don't so much rely on peer review to recommend a product. We rely on peers to share technical information. And like oftentimes it's just not as much about a solution as it is about, have you checked out this new feature, in this programming language or in this open source application, or, when you tie these things together, or if you're trying to justify this, here's how you do it kind of thing, right? Like there's so many, more topics to cover, more technical depth, that it's not as much of when a technical person goes to recommend a solution. I think some of the peer is involved, but it's much more of, I've gone to the in-depth webinar, I've read the AWS documentation, I've tested some stuff out myself, I've talked to my peers inside my own organization, my technical peers, right, to see if it fits with our other pieces. It's just a different process than CISOs that are just bombarded with everything. I can see that group going, oh my God, like what are you using to solve this problem, right?
Right. And it's nonstop. I mean, we're flooded with information. Yeah. We're flooded with marketed technology solutions to every damn problem on the face of this earth.
Whether you have them or not.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, the professional level social media of LinkedIn these days has now become a marketing tool. Yeah. So I barely go there anymore, right? Because every message I have in LinkedIn now is somebody trying to sell me something. And for me, it's going to someone you trust, right? And when you talk about your peers, it's fellow CISOs. It's also partners, right? I mean, for my organization, Carousel, we partner with some of the best in the industry, and it's going out to some of those trusted resources at our partner companies and bouncing things off of their CISO or their technical experts or their subject matter expert in that technology area.
I talk to a lot of security vendors on a weekly basis because of what we do, right? And I always try to get this point across. Our audience needs to know you, like you, and trust you before they engage. Yep. It's that trust factor, and it takes time to. Yeah, but it takes time to build that level of trust. They have to get to know you. They have to decide that they like you and that there's something interesting that you're talking about, and then it builds a level of trust to engage. And when you look at some of the other results, only 13% of CISOs go to events to learn about security products. But think about how many millions of dollars are spent at physical events trying to get the CISO's attention. Yeah. It's not where they're spending the time.
Absolutely not. I mean, I would argue that the deeper marketing swag you get into, the more turned off we're going to be. Because, a CISO is going to see that. And to be honest with you, I would much rather appreciate someone coming to me and asking, what problems are you facing every day? What outcomes are you looking for your business? What challenges are you having integrating, cybersecurity best practices into your culture? Because every company is different. Every company has a different culture. Every company is operating their business a little bit differently. And you have to get to know us as a business in order for us to be able to gain that level of trust and know what our individual problems are.
Yes, absolutely. And it talks about that a little bit, that there is no one size fits all in the security space. So stop pitching the same thing without understanding the challenges that an organization's facing, because then you have to craft your message to whatever those challenges are, and they change company to company.
100%. Like I mentioned, my culture in my company is different than, Security Weekly's culture and what they're going to want, for a security vendor, someone, a business partner, right? You have to get to know us. You have to put the elbow grease in at the end of the day, right? I always say, bring your A game to the table, and we can sit down and talk, because you're going to come in and you need to have a level of intellectual curiosity to learn about my business, the culture of my business, and me as a CISO, me as a leader within the organization.
Yeah. The second one that I pulled out of here was CISOs prefer objective third-party material, which means they're not necessarily seeking out a vendor and looking at vendor documentation. They want independent third-party validation of their solutions. Again, I talk to a ton of security vendors on a weekly basis, and this is what I try to get across to them. You need a way for somebody to help validate what you're doing to get traction. CISOs want that independent third-party validation.
100% correct. And the beauty of working for a company like Carousel as an IT services provider, not a security-centric service provider, but an IT service provider, is for years and years and years, we've always taken that vendor agnostic approach. And we always say, we want to learn about your business problems. We want to learn about your outcomes. And then from there, we'll align the right technology, the right solution, the right manufacturer based on what comes out of those needs, those requirements that we're talking through, that we're really digging in and figuring out what the best fit for your organization is. We're not just going to bring some shiny tool in and that you're only going to get 20% adoption of. We're going to sit down and we're going to do the hard work, put that elbow grease in to learn about you, your organization, and what the right fit is. Because the right fit for your organization may be one manufacturer, and for another, for the same type of platform, could be a totally different manufacturer.
Yeah. This next one, when I first read it, I was a little surprised. CISOs evaluate face-to-face and hands-on. I understand the face-to-face side, right? I think in here they prefer kind of the small, remote, the dinners, right? The sit-down roundtable discussions with their peers. And I get that from a face-to-face perspective. And a lot of those events, even regionally, are geared to bring in some vendors to really kind of talk through aspects of their solution. How much time do you really get to be hands-on in your role, Jason? Because that's the one I'm like, do you really have enough time to get hands-on?
Well, I mean, I took a look at this and said, hands-on as far as my entire organization, my department, my security team, right? Because if we sit across the table and you've talked about my business problems, you've talked about the outcomes that we need, you've provided a solution that I'm interested in, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a proof of concept in my security lab, and I'm going to hand it over to my team, right? And they're going to beat it up and find out and really prove out if there's going to be value add to our organization by going with that product. So hands-on for my team, absolutely.
But hands-on
me,
from the
no, but I at this point in my career, I delegate the hands-on to get that proof of concept completed.
Unless, Jason, there's an aspect of the solution where you, the CISO as a role, has an interface to it to get reports 100%. Or
if there's
right?
business intelligence coming out of it, reporting, dashboarding, metrics that we need to talk about, metrics that we need to design, absolutely. From the deep dive technical perspective, I'm going to rely on my team that I trust, right? And they know that going into the proof of concept, there's going to be requirements that are set. Those products are going to be tested on those requirements, and ultimately my team's going to meet with me and score it out and tell me how it scored.
I think the C-level position that does remain somewhat hands-on is your CTO, right? Because they may do a proof of concept and then hand it off to the technical team, right? Those are the conversations I have with my own peers, right? Is we're not necessarily the production implementers, right? But we hands-on with some technology to do a part of the proof of concept and then hand it off to other folks, right?
100%. And honestly, I mean, I partner with our CTO, right? So, my CTO is a peer of mine. And anytime I need, me or my department needs to take a deep dive into the technical aspects, I'll lean on my CTO because he's out there in the market looking to see what, the latest, greatest innovative product lines are.
I'm curious on webinars. 15% of CISOs said they rely on webinars to do some of that. Do you attend many webinars, Jason, yourself, or is it more your team?
No, I do. I attend webinars. We host some webinars from a technology perspective as well. And I'll tell you, from a market side, we've seen a huge boost in attendance since COVID-19 hit. We've had more attendance on our webinars than we've ever had. So
and probably more
I
webinars.
think more and more folks in this time are attending now.
More webinars available today.
Yes.
Right. You
100%.
see a huge up. I see some uptick in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, all
think
those marketing dollars that were based on events are now going to virtual sessions. They have to, right?
Yeah, have to.
So,
yeah, and
I will say one thing that I did take umbrage with in this one was there was a section that said what sources should vendors avoid, and I didn't like the fact that the author lumped podcasts in with social media, because I'll tell you right now, myself and the peers that I deal with, from a CISO perspective that I work with, that we're constantly listening to podcasts, constantly.
It depends too. Is the podcast from the vendor? Is the white paper from the vendor? Is it done in conjunction?
And it was a very vague statement, right? It says, CISOs aren't using podcasts or social media to keep up with industry news. Well, I'll call BS on that.
But that's content, right? And you could apply that to writing in a white paper or research or whatever, right? There's stuff that's done by the vendor. And I'm not saying all the stuff done by the vendor is it's not, right? But there's content that's solely created by the vendor. There's content that's created in collaboration with the vendor and a third party. Then there's third party independent. Those could be podcasts, those could be white papers, those could be webinars, whatever it is. And you have to be cognizant of that, content is king, and those are the different ways in which I've seen it be created over time.
Absolutely. And I think that podcast medium offers such a level of education, if it is, a non-marketing led, manufacturer based podcast, right? If it's vendor agnostic,
not that we're biased
earlier
in that model.
No, it offers such a huge benefit, though, honestly, because the consumption model is incredible, right? I mean, I listen to all the other shows for Security Weekly, and it's mostly when I get up in the morning, I fire up my truck, I drive into the office now, because there's some days I'm going to the office and I'm listening to one of the podcasts.
Yeah, and I also think that there's three different buckets of the way in which the barriers to consume content. And I've been thinking about this recently because I think it's really changed, right? We've seen John Strand do some really, really creative things. It's working out really well for him. So happy for the team over there. They're like pay what you want for our training class, right? Yeah, so there's, stuff that you pay for, like a conference that you go to that you pay for, right? There's stuff that you have to register for in varying levels of how much information you have to give for that registration. Then there's completely free but sponsored content, right? Yep. And then there's completely free but not sponsored content. Now, we at Security Weekly try and have a balance between all of those different areas, right? We don't often run events where you have to pay for something, right? But in the other areas, we try and balance, completely free, sponsored, and registered, or some mix. Sometimes it's a combination, right? Sometimes you pay to go to a conference and you're being marketed to the people who are sponsoring 100%. It as well, or have to consume some sponsored content as part of that. So it's all a balance. And I think that, the appetite is changing, especially when we get to CISOs, right? Where they pick how they're going to consume that content.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's why
I think the benefit for organizations is, just like Security Weekly does, and why I love it so much, honestly, is it's solution based, it's outcome based, right? I mean, you're talking about positively impacting your listeners, and that's the key, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it ties into this last point, right? Which is CISOs expect vendors to do their research. They expect you to understand the challenges and problems that they're facing. And they expect you to be able to talk about how to solve that problem in a unique or differentiated way. This is one of the foundational elements of how we try to drive every single interview on this podcast is understand problem, solution, value. Vendors need to understand. That's what CISOs want.
Yeah. It's like 100%. When we get an email from a CBD company and they're like, "Oh, we want to advertise on your show." It's like, well, that's backwards for so many different reasons, right? Like, first, you obviously have not listened to our show. Like, we talk about hacking and security on this show, right? And so it's likely not our audience. I mean, podcasting is very much a niche, kind of thing. And then it's, on the flip side, we think about what does our audience want to hear, right? Do they want to hear ads for something that's not security related? The answer I've always gotten from our audience is no. And so we don't do that, right? But then take that back to, the CISO that does not have this problem, but it's constantly being marketed to be from people that are like, you have this problem. You didn't do your research, right? You didn't do your homework.
Don't tell me what problems I have. Ask me what problems I have.
Yep.
Right. We don't want to be dictated to, because if you don't understand our business, or you don't at least put in the effort to understand a little bit about our business and what we're doing and the challenges we have, we're not going to be dictated to.
Yeah.
We don't have enough time. We're all so busy. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, CISOs right now are probably more busy than they have ever been because of the situation we're in. Mm-hmm. We're in a situation where our workforce had to go remote for the most part. And hey, by the way, in many instances, revenue's either flat or dropping, right? So now we have business constraints that we need to deal with. So we're busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I thought was really interesting is 34% of CISOs prefer product demos. Is that appropriate follow-up? Now, we've stayed away from doing a lot of more technical sessions on this show, but it sounds like you guys like the product demos. We may have to do a little more deep dives on this show, because I thought that number was a little high. But I know that our audience in general loves to get their hands on product. They like to see it. They like to validate that it's working. I just didn't think 34% at the CISO level was realistic.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to meet certain criteria in order to get a seat at the table to even do the demo, right? Yeah, so, agreed. Like I said, number one, you have to build that certain level of trust that I want to have the conversation and even talk about your product and how it could solve some issues. Secondly, there needs to be a level of a business value that I know it's going to add to be able to pull my team away to do a proof of concept or do a demo. I mean, for me, it takes a lot to pull my team away to spend an hour demoing something. So it better be worth it.
Yeah, agreed. And I recommend to all of our sponsors, your call to action needs to figure out how to get the listeners into your product so they can get their hands on it, because people want to see it. And this survey result just kind of reinforces that, even at the CISO level, to get your hands on it.
Yep. And ultimately be able to define and articulate how it adds value back to the business.
Yeah.
Because right now, especially right now, every investment gets scrutinized. Mm-hmm. Everything's getting looked at. Every investment, every new technology, it's getting scrutinized because of the way the economy is right now. So be able to empower that CISO to sit in front of a CFO or CEO and be able to articulate the business value it's going to bring.
Yeah. Challenging times. I thought it was a great report. Anybody who wants to dig in, the link is in the wiki, in the show notes. Paul, Jason, thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Next week is Black Hat, and we're going to live stream this event, the show, on Tuesday evening. So a little shakeup next week in the schedules with the Black Hat event going on. So I hope to see everyone next week on Business Security Weekly.